Okay, guys. Well, hopefully everything is working properly. YouTube is giving me a bit of a hard time. Hi there. So, like I was saying, YouTube is giving me a bit of a hard time with the audio, and I understand that it's kind of slow at the moment. A lot of vacations going on, holidays and whatnot. But nevertheless, people are coming in, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, that said, what I would like to talk about today is what it's like to be a 3D artist, a beginning artist, a freelance artist, a professional artist, working for a studio, working for yourself, and that kind of stuff, right? So if you guys have any questions, let me know, and I'll jump straight in. So who's first? All right, so let's see. Are there any alternatives to Marvelous Designer? Yes. Yes, there are. I wouldn't say that they do the exact same thing, but you can do things that you can do in the Marvelous Designer in other software packages. So let's say Maya, for example, Encloth in Maya is similar to what you do. But if you are talking about a complete package that is similar to Marvelous Designer, unfortunately not. They are an industry leader when it comes to digital clothing, and it's an expensive software, expensive piece of software, but it's expensive for a reason, because it's very, very cool. Okay. Well, thank you, September Assembly. You guys are an inspiration to me as well, because if you guys weren't watching my videos, I probably wouldn't make them. So thank you. Let's see. What's the best rendering plugin for Maya 2018? Good question. Well, I used to work a lot with Mental Ray, and then NVIDIA stopped making Mental Ray, and then Maya went with Arnold. But I would say that the trend in the industry right now is that people are moving away from plugins and more are working with standalone render packages. One of the reasons for that is because CPU-based rendering is moving towards a GPU-based rendering, and programs like Redshift are very much on that topic. And I guess that's one of the reasons. So there you go. So I got a question here. Let's see. Shyamji Sahu says, say my name. I probably butchered your name completely, but I gave it a try. Okay. Let's see. What do I think about Art Tablet for modeling? Not quite sure what you mean by that. Is that a tablet brand, or is that software, or what is that? Let's see. And while I'm waiting on that, let's see. Okay. So Mamoon is saying, I am having problems with clean topology in detailed meshes. How to learn? Well, obviously by practicing, but the tip that I would like to give when you need to learn how to model properly with a clean topology is try to keep things low poly. Okay. What people tend to do when they model in 3D, especially when they are beginners, is that they add way too much edges and so forth, and they kind of paint themselves into a corner because they think they need all that detail. And once you want to UV, for example, or clean up your topology, you got way too much stuff going on. So my advice would be to hold on to that. So the entire chat window just disappeared for whatever reason, but it's back. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So drawing tablets for digital art. That was the question. Now, there are more alternatives out there right now for Wacom. Wacom is, of course, the industry standard, and they're very expensive, but they're also very good. But nowadays you got a UG. I did a tutorial on one of those, or a review, and you got other brands as well. So it kind of all depends on what you're going to do with it. I mean, if you're going to use the tablet, let's say for sculpting in ZBrush, then the brush sensitivity is very important. And I would probably advise you to get a Wacom. If you're using it, let's say for a drawing in Photoshop because you do concept art, then maybe you could try an alternative, right? Photogrammetry tutorials. Yes, I'll think about that. I saw that question before. It's not that I forgot about that. So I'll see if I can fit that in, right? Okay, so love the Wacom. Yeah, I can imagine. I'm waiting for mine, actually, the 27-inch Cintiq Touch. I was promised to have it before I went on my trip a month ago, and I still don't have it. So we'll see what happens, right? You guys have such cool names, and I apologize for probably pronouncing them completely wrong, but I'll do my very best. So, Moyosore Unguleye, awesome. Okay, thanks a lot. All my modeling techniques are from your teaching, and I will get better and faster day by day. Well, you're very welcome. So, I actually have a question for you guys. I'm kind of doing a little investigation as far as where people are located, from a geography point of view. So what country do you live? What is education like in the country that you live? And is it easy for you to get in contact with other 3D artists worldwide? And is it easy for you to work remotely on 3D projects? So if you guys have anything to share on that, that would be awesome. So I get a comment here saying, hi, I'm from the Netherlands. So there you go. Goedemiddag. Let's say from India, and Maya and Max. Okay. I locked our program. We're willing to get into modeling. So, okay, that's a good question. Want to get into modeling? Should I start learning how to draw first? I wouldn't necessarily say you need to be able to physically draw, but you need to be able to understand drawing techniques. So it's important to understand perspective, to understand framing, to understand composition, to understand how things work. And as you move forward towards 3D objects, you kind of get a different understanding of how things work, okay? So let's see. Greetings from Germany and sehr guten Mittag. Zig's Pep. Guess we have good access through 3D schools. Well, the thing in Germany right now is, and I've been hearing this more and more, that basically if you do not count the US, then Germany, and specifically Munich, is, I would say, the capital of the 3D industry nowadays. So I think if you live in Germany or have availability to go to German schools, you are really lucky, okay? Okay, Oxford, nice. College, which you learn in design. Yeah, I'm well aware of that. I'm in contact a lot with people in the UK, and I work a lot with universities in the UK as well. So Dream High Animation is saying hello from the UAE, so the United Arab Emirates, if I say that correctly. Cool. Do I do any animation or rigging? Yes, I do. Now, the reason I don't do a lot of tutorials on rigging and animation is because they're typically character related, and I usually model props. Now, I rig and animate props on occasion, doors that open and close and wheels and cars that turn and whatnot. But rigging is usually related to characters. And like I said, because I don't do that, I don't do that a lot. But all in all, I would say that I, at least on my channel related to rigging and animation, I think I have maybe 50 or 60 videos or so. Right, so Daz is from Ireland and living in Holland, working on vehicle design and rigging. Ah, cool. Let's say following a course, game design, ROC Friesland. Okay, the way up north in Holland. Why most companies ask for 3ds Max and not Maya? Well, I don't believe that to be true, to be honest. I know that discussion goes on and on and on, and always will go on and on and on. It's just a different thing. It's very much related to what kind of industry you're in. I mean, traditionally, Maya has been created more towards Maya Lite or Maya LT towards game design, and Maya in general more towards, I would say, animation when it comes to commercials, feature film, or whatnot. 3ds Max is much more related to photorealistic interior design environments. Now, it's really cool if you know both, but most cases, it's just related to whatever the studio has invested in. So if they got 3ds Max on their server, then that's what you will be required to work with, okay? So let's see, Dream High Animation. What's my opinion on Blender? Well, Blender is completely awesome if you don't have the availability to work with Maya or 3ds Max. Blender is, of course, completely free, and it's getting more professional every day. A lot of people in the industry that exclusively work in Blender are getting more and more recognition. They're winning prizes. So I think Blender is starting to get really serious about their stuff. And although I don't work with it, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Let's see what else. 3D model swap between game and cinematography. Okay, so Thomas Carbonara, just wild guess here. I would kind of guess maybe Italy or Spain, not sure. Is it easy for a 3D modeler to swap between game and cinema industry? When it comes to workflow, because I assume that that's what the question is related to, it's a totally different thing. I mean, the games they're usually time sensitive. They have very tough budgets. They got really strict deadlines. The pressure is up there, and it's critical that you move fast. It has to be real-time rendering because it's a game, so your poly count is always an issue. However, if you're working on a feature film, typical project in feature film can take even years. Teams are usually much bigger, and there's more eye for detail. So I would say if you have worked in the film industry and you start to work in the game industry, you're going to have a rough time. Vice versa, maybe not so much. So what do I prefer to work with, modeling for a game or a movie? For me, that's very, very easy. I definitely like to work for movies much more than games. Not because I don't like games, but because I am more of a traditional artist originally, and typically working as a modeler on a movie, you're much more involved in the storytelling process, while in a game, for example, the person that plays the game is much more involved in creating the story. So that's my reason for that. So Hishamville is saying, hi from Morocco. Which is better for modeling, props, high res or low res for animation? Well, that depends on what you're using the props for. I get that question a lot as far as poly count is concerned. What is considered a low poly prop? What is considered a high poly prop? Well, if you are creating, let's say, a prop for a mobile game on your phone, then maybe a poly count of 40 is all you get, right? If you're working on a console game, that is maybe 400 or 4,000. If you got a primary prop, like the weapon of the main character, that could be 10 or 20,000. And if you're talking about the main character itself, that can go up to a couple of 100,000, depending on what you're using it for, okay? Okay, so let's see, GTX 1080 Ti and i7 CPU, 8770. Is that good for game modeling? It's definitely good for game modeling. It kind of depends a little bit on how much RAM memory you have, but that said, really cool. So Visual Blender is saying, hi, Mike, do you work for free for any project? Do you mean free as in not paid? So Manuel is saying, what do you think about fine arts background and getting a job in the VFX industry? Well, if you have the skills to get hired in the VFX industry and you have a fine arts background, then you definitely have a plus. If you only have the fine arts background, you need to learn a lot for sure. Let's see what else. Am I an AMD guy or Intel? Intel all the way, always. So 32 gigs, yeah, that's fine. That's actually more than fine. 32 gigs is perfect. I mean, you can always beef that up. I got 128 right now, but that's kind of overkill. But if you can get it, sure. Let's see. Thanks for answering. What's the better freelance artist, or which is better, freelance 3D artist or 3D? Okay, so I talked about this in my last live stream. So what is better, being a freelance 3D artist or a 3D artist working for a studio? Well, the thing is, they are not that far apart anymore. The reason I like being a freelance artist is I can work on whatever I want. If I don't like to work on something, I don't. Now, if you work for a studio back in the day, you would be an employee, you would maybe be salary based, you'd be a senior working there for years and whatnot. But nowadays, what you see more and more is that you get hired by a studio to work on a project, and once the project is done, you're gone, okay? So if this is a short product, let's say for a game studio, and it's a couple of months, there's not that big of a difference being a freelancer or not. The thing is, freelance artists typically get paid better, in my opinion. Okay, so let's see what else. Okay, so Red Hood Dragon Slayer is saying, is end dynamics important? Well, end dynamics, or what is called now FX in Maya 2018, is that important? To an extent. I think if you are a generic 3D artist, kind of a widespread, know a little bit about everything, you should know the basics, but never try to compete to somebody who does that for a living. I mean, it's a very, very specific thing, and they spend years and years and years getting very, very, very good at it. So do you need to know enough to get by? Yes. Should you spend all your time on it? Probably not, unless you want that to turn, if you want that to make your specialty, okay? So Mamoon is saying, what are the tasks of a 3D artist? And where do you get your freelance projects? Well, this is actually the topic that I talked about when I was speaking at Animago last year. And for those of you who want to know, I will be speaking there this year again. So it's in October. You can check it out on www.animago.com. It's really cool. So if you have the opportunity to go, I certainly would. But what I talked about is, okay, how do you make it as a freelance artist in a business world? How do you get clients? How do you get, you know, paid? How do you know how much money to ask? That kind of thing. Sorry, it seems that I'm talking a little bit too fast. I'll try to slow down. My apologies for that. So okay, Army Ejin is 10 years old. Wow. So how do you get your projects? Well, one word: network, 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 network. Make sure you got a good ArtStation profile. Make sure, absolutely sure, you are on LinkedIn. Link with anybody that is relevant to the industry, whether they are art director, whether they are fellow artists, it doesn't matter. Make sure that you know, you have a very, very strong network. When people start to get familiar with your work, they will find you and they will ask you whether you're available, whether you have time or not to work on a project. Now, if you don't, then please make sure that you have people in your network move forward and introduce to that customer, so they will do the same for you in the future. Okay. So, for example, I spend a lot of my time on tutorials, and I'm not always available to do projects. Whenever I get asked to do a project, I typically will know somebody in the industry that is available, and that's how you build your network. Okay. All right. So let's see. What's the best way to make normals and bump? Well, I don't use bump maps anymore, and I haven't for years, for the simple reason that a normal map is basically the new and improved bump map. Okay. Now, normal maps and bump maps are not hugely different in what they do. They look different, but they're not hugely different. The big difference is between a displacement map and a normal map. A displacement map actually changes the geometry, and a normal map doesn't. And to answer your question, I usually use a Substance Painter to create my normal maps by baking high to low poly. But sometimes I will modify normal maps in Photoshop. Okay. Okay, so I'm getting a question here. How is rendering in Maya, or should I use a rendering software like Keyshot or Marmoset Toolbag? Well, that kind of depends on where you do your texturing. I tend to do a lot of texturing in Substance Painter, and from there you can export your textures to Maya, to Keyshot, to Marmoset Toolbag. So I use basically all of them. But I feel that external renderers, like, for example, Keyshot, give you much more flexibility. And most people that I know nowadays render outside of Maya. Okay, good question. What's the difference between Substance Painter and Substance Designer? Well, to keep it really simple, Substance Painter is for texturing. Substance Designer is for creating textures. Okay, so Ziggs Pep is saying, is it necessary to get a degree in a higher education degree, bachelor, master's, or is it all about portfolio? Well, that kind of depends on how you position yourself in a market. Are you a freelance artist, or are you a studio artist? I mean, if you go on an interview at a larger studio and they got 500 people to choose from, why wouldn't they choose the people with a master's degree, right? It's not like you're going to get paid more or less. However, if you are a freelance artist and you work on projects for studios, or you work independently, it's very much about, you know, what your skills are, because the end result counts always. So if you have a master's degree and 50 other people have a master's degree and 2 people have nothing at all, and these 2 people outperform all the people with master's degrees, obviously they're going to go with the best result, right? That's kind of how that works. Let's see what else. Oh, and by the way, guys, I had the experience while doing these live streams that for some reason YouTube just shuts down the audio. So if the audio goes, then I'll probably have to sign off, just so you know up front, okay? Let's see what else. What should you know? What should a 3D artist know before start working in a game studio? Well, if you are new in the industry, and let's say you are a junior artist and you start to work for a studio, one thing I want to say for sure is that respect is a big thing. People worked very, very hard to get into that role, to get that job. They usually have a lot of skills, otherwise they wouldn't be in that job. And if you come in like a so-called know-it-all and you're questioning their skills and you're critiquing their skills, you're going to be out there like in seconds, right? So be very respectful to colleagues that have a lot of experience. And, you know, what I would do is I would, you know, get them coffee. I would polish their shoes. I would do anything to spend time with these people, because what they will teach you is much more valuable than probably anything you will ever learn in university, okay? So it's kind of paying your dues like in any other role, but, you know. Okay, so Hidden Fireworks is saying best software for retopology. I think it's called Auto Retopo, but it kind of depends on your workflow. If you, for example, start off in ZBrush, make a high poly sculpt and have to bring it down to a low poly, then you would have to retopologize it. I typically start from a low poly and work my way up, so I don't necessarily have to do that. But if you do, I would say auto retopo. Okay, so how can I learn to texture? I don't really know how to answer that question. How to learn to texture? So what's the problem? That you don't know what textures or how to apply them, or you don't know how to UV? And this is for Vatsal. Can you please clarify? Okay, so Faber Soul, I think. Hey Mike, I'm stuck in a scene. How do I make a candle flickering light effect with the light intensity of my volume light? Well, first of all, I did a tutorial on exactly this, but I'm not sure why you want the light intensity of the volume light. I don't really get what you mean by that. Don't know. Please clarify. Okay, so let's see. Environment modeling. What's the best software? Well, my question is this. Environment modeling for what? Is it for a game? Because if it's for a game, I would do the environment modeling in the game engine, for example, in Unreal. If it's because you're doing some kind of architectural deal, there's specialized software for that. If you are creating a forest, you got special foliage software. Okay, so environment modeling for a game. Well, if that's an Unreal game, then I would create the environment in Unreal, and I would add elements created in Maya. Okay, so Mahmoud is saying, what do I think about Unreal versus Unity? Well, the big thing that I've seen, and hopefully I'm not going to mix these two up, but please double check, is Unity has changed its payment model, which is very, very dangerous for those who don't know about this. What they basically did is they said, okay, you can use Unity, but if you create a game and it goes live and you make a bunch of money off it, they get a percentage. And you'll keep on paying them forever. And with Unreal, that's not the case. So I see a lot of, especially smaller game studios, moving away from Unity, and they're all jumping on board with Unreal. So let's see. Red Hood is saying, what's a special software foliage? Will we ever see tutorials for that? I need to, hang on, guys. I need to see if I can find that. I can't look that up right now because I got a million screens open right now. And I don't recall the name, but I'll have to look that up. But there's specialized software. There's specialized companies there that make software that will have you create trees and grass and ponds and all that kind of cool stuff. Okay. Let's see, any UV tutorials? I made about 40 of them, so bunch. Okay. Okay, so Indian Brothers, please make video series tutorials on Maya, Turtle to Unity, Unreal Engine, optimize models, baking, AO, high to poly, and so on and so on and so on. Now, one thing I need to clarify to you guys is that when I do tutorials and I use software to do tutorials, and this is not me whining, it's just me explaining, I need to buy all this software, right? And it's expensive. You guys know that. So I get questions to do a million tutorials and a million different pieces of software, and I don't have all that software. Okay, it's very, very expensive, and I try to get software. Marvelous Designer, ZBrush, Maya, 3D Code, Quixel. I got all of that, but I cannot keep up with every question that I get on every type of software that I get, because I would, be living in a tent in a week. Okay. Let's see, what software do I use for creating fluid? And well, I don't create water for games, but when I need to create fluid, I would typically use Bifrost or My Fluids. Okay, tutorials on character modeling. Well, like I said, I don't do tutorials on characters, but I'm probably going to slowly move towards that. Now, people always ask me, why don't you do tutorials on characters? Don't you know how to do characters? Well, one is related to the other. If you never do it, you're usually not that good at it. I do know how to do characters. Actually, I started off doing characters. But the thing is, for me personally, I like props more because I like environments and props. Characters typically have 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. And for me, that got kind of boring at some point. So I left that alone, and I haven't done that for many years. And as a result, I'm not really good at it. Okay. Let's see what else. Okay, Martin, have fun. Get back to work. Speak to you soon, buddy. So let's see what else, guys. Oh, before I forget, guys, now I've got a bunch of you guys on here. Who of you are participating in the 3D modeling challenge on MC Tutorials? The closing date is July 1st, and I'm not seeing a lot of entries here. So are you guys participating? Okay, good question from Michael Gomez. Again, hopefully I pronounced it okay. Question is, when assembling your portfolio, should you have a wide variety of things to show off, like environments, characters, and lighting, or is it best to only show on your best work? Well, you kind of answered your own question here. You should show your skills related to the job you want to be hired for, all right? So if you want to be an environment artist and you want to get hired as an environment artist, of course you would show your environment work. Now, it's never a good idea to throw all your stuff on there and only post your very, very best work. But most important is to make sure that the elements of or the workflow is visible. So instead of showing 20 different environments, show one environment, but show the breakdown, okay? So show the wireframe, show the ambient occlusion pass, show the beauty pass, show the composition, and so on. So they get a better understanding of how you work and how clean your work is. A final render doesn't say a lot if they don't know what the, wireframe and so forth looks like, okay? Okay, so what kind of system do you need to make more than 16 million polygon? Now, my question would be, why would you want to make more than 16 million polygon? And I'm getting a question whether I can do a video on my basics. Well, to be honest, almost all my videos in Maya are on Maya basics. I get the question a lot whether I can do more advanced videos. Well, the thing is, I don't think there's a huge need for more advanced videos. I typically tend to create videos that are fairly short, fairly simple, but instead of showing you how to model a certain thing, it's more towards how to teach you a certain technique, if you will, right? So it's not about the model, it's about the technique. And it's better to explain that on a simple model than on the complex one, okay? What is my email for doing portfolio? You mean how people can approach me for work? That is hermesmike@hotmail.com. So Dix Trill, thank you so much. Okay, so Mihai is saying, yes, I think more advanced videos is more better, okay? So there you go. What do you consider more advanced? I mean, I get questions from people, can you do a tutorial on how to model a Ferrari? Well, you don't model a Ferrari in 15 minutes, and you also don't model a Ferrari in 2 hours. So you would typically have to create a series maybe of 20 or 30 or 40 parts. And what I know from experience is nobody, and absolutely nobody, will watch them. I did videos in the past where it had 5 episodes, 6 episodes, 7, 8 episodes, and people look at the first or second one, but they just don't stick to it because they cannot afford to invest hours and hours and hours into one thing. Okay, so Legit Boy is saying, how long would it take you to make a simple 5-minute animation? Well, that depends. If that animation is a bouncing ball, it would probably take me 5 minutes to make it. If that animation is a character running and jumping over stuff and doing some kung fu and whatnot, it would maybe take me 2 months or more. Okay, so let's see. This is related to the question that I got about Substance Painter. When I paint one in Substance Painter, the paint goes all over the place and in other sections as well. Well, what you can do for that is, first of all, make sure that your layers are stacked correctly in Substance Painter, so the paint only hits the area that you're working on. If you got everything in one layer, then the paint's going to go all over the place. So check out layers in Substance Painter. Okay, so Anval is saying, doesn't it happen that you're not able to fill a hole, especially triangle holes in a mesh? Okay, whenever that happens, there's usually a history issue, and what I tend to do there is just delete all the faces until I got one clean hole, if you will, and then I'll refill that. Okay, so back on that question about the system that will take 60 million polygons. I think you're looking at NVIDIA GTX 1080 Ti, and then 2, 3, or 4 of them stacked, looking at probably 256 gigs of RAM, multiple CPUs, probably linked in a server situation. So you're talking about a system somewhere a ballpark of about, I would say, $20,000 to $50,000. So this is a really cool question. Mateus Curry is saying, when you start modeling, how do you practice to get better? Well, what I do, and I do this in videos all the time, is model without reference. People seem to think that learning how to work with Maya starts when you're actually sitting behind your computer. And in my experience, it's not the case. 3D modeling is very much about understanding how things are constructed and understanding proportions, understanding scale. So what I will do is, in real life, I will look at objects, I don't know, a coffee mug, whatever, right? And I will model it without using a reference image. So I won't look at it. I'll model it, you know, just from the top of my head, what I remember that it looks like. And once that is okay, then you can start to think about, okay, in what sequence am I going to model? And you start to think ahead, okay? You're going to have to UV your model at some point. So what method of modeling is going to make your UV process easier? So what you can do is take the same thing and model it 3 times or 4 times or 5 times. So if you need to model a sofa, first you just start modeling it, and then you find out, okay, I made mistakes in certain areas, or it's not optimal for UV. Then you model it again.